We continue now at the top of Daf Tzadiam and Beis Meseches Bava Metzia. This is Bava Metzia Daf 90b. And the previous summit, the Gemara asked whether there's Amir L'Nochri when it comes to Bal Tachso, meaning to say, is it Asur Midrabanan to tell a non-Jew to muzzle the animal? And the Gemara brings a proof because there was a question asked of the father of Shmuel, where the case was there were oxen de Ganvin Aramoy, that the non-Jews, they stole the ox, Umenagchin Yason, and then they would castrate them on behalf of the Jews. Mahu, so they asked him, what's the halacha in this situation? Rashi explains, Umenagchin Yason, they would castrate the animals. Umesarson Osam, again, it means they would castrate them. V'yachar kach machzir l'baylam, then they would return the animal to the Jewish owner. Umehavas ba'olav Yisrael, and because of the fact that they loved the owner who happened to be Jewish, it was actually like they were doing him a favor. Gonvo hanachri shumakiro, the non-Jew who was a friend of the Jew would steal the animal, essentially pretending to steal it. Umesarso, and then castrate the animal. Kadeshi yafa lecharisha. This was essentially a loophole that they tried to use because then the animal would be better for plowing. And so they asked the father of Shmuel, Mahu, what's the halacha in this situation? And Shalach Lu, he sent to them the following answer: Haram is avid behu. They're using an artifice over here, essentially using a halachic loophole, and therefore that is not appropriate. Yarimu alayu, therefore we should use this against them. V'yazdavnun, and we should impose a fine, and they are forced to sell this animal. Rashi says, V'yazdavnun v'lo yene Yisrael be'avera. The Jew should not benefit from this avera. Hu asa kadeshe yafa lachrosh. He's doing it in order that it's good to plow with. Lefikach yiknasu shalo yachrosh bo. Therefore, we impose a fine that he's not allowed to plow with this animal. Alma be'isr delav nami asura amir l'nachri. We see that even though this is just a lav, we know there's amir l'nachri by Shabbos where it's an isr skila, but here where it's just an isr lav, there is a concept of amir l'nachri, and therefore just like it applies over here, it would apply to Bal Tachsom as well. And the Gemara continues, Zamar Rapapa says, B'nei Ma'arava, the people of the West, meaning the people of Eretz Yisrael. Rashi says, B'nei Ma'arava, D'sholchu le'avu D'shmuel hachi. They're the ones that initially asked this question to the father of Shmuel. Savri la, they hold Rev Chidka, they hold like Rev Chidka, D'yamar B'nei Noach mitzuven al asirus, that he says that B'nei Noach, non-Jews, actually are commanded in terms of castrating animals. They're not allowed to, so it's an isser for them as well. You can't bring a proof from this particular isser because it actually applies to non-Jews. So therefore, the Jew would transgress lifnei iver. It would be a problem of putting a stumbling block in front of the blind. And Rashi says, meaning if this Jew is telling the non-Jew to castrate the animal, that's mishum lifnei iver lo sitein michshol. That's a problem of lifnei iver. But let's say it would be something that the non-Jew is not warned about. I might say that it is permitted, so that's why you can't bring a proof from this particular case. And the Gemara continues, Sava Rava L'meima, Rava thought to say, Yimachru L'shchita, this fine that we're imposing when you have the situation of castration of the animals. So we said that there's a fine imposed that you have to sell the animal. So Rava thought to say that you have to actually sell the animal only for shchita purposes. You can't sell it for plowing. If you would sell it for plowing, you would get much more money. And so he thought the fine was that strict that it has to be sold only for shchita. Rashi says, L'shchita shlo yoel sirusan lahalos b'dmei, and that way the fact that you castrated the animal isn't causing it to go up in value with regards to shchita. Aval l'charisha lo, but you can't sell it for plowing. Shedmein yikar mishum sirusan. On the contrary, now the animal is very expensive. It's going to get a high price because of the fact that the animal was castrated. That's what Rava thought. Amar le Abaye said to Rava, Dayan shekanasta le mechira. It's enough that you're imposing a fine that you have to sell the animal. You don't have to make such a fine that you can only sell it for shchita. Rashi says, Dayan shekanasta le mechira delotarach kulihai ela sheyachrosh bo, because the whole purpose that the person did this was to plow with it. V'halo tiskai machshavto, he wasn't able to do what he intended. That's enough of a fine. You don't have to impose such a great fine that you can't sell it for plowing, that you have to sell it for shchita. That already is going too far in terms of the imposition of the knas. And the Gemara continues, Pshita is obvious, but no gadol, let's say his adult son, let's say we imposed a fine on someone in the situation of castrating the animal, and we said he has to sell the animal. So if he sells it to his adult son, ki acher dami, that's like selling it to somebody else, and that would certainly be fine. But no katan mai, what if he sells it to his son who is a minor? Rav Achi osir v'Rav Ashi shari. Rav Achi says that's forbidden, but Rav Ashi says it is permitted. Meremar and Marzutra v'yamri lahanu trei chasidi. Meremar and Marzutra, and some people say it was two pious individuals. What they would do is mechal fi hadadi. They would simply exchange their animals with one another. That's how they would get around this issue. Rashi says ka'achar dami v'dayu and machrulo. Again, it's sufficient to sell it to his son who's an adult. And mechlefu hadadi, they would exchange with one another. Shvarim shalahen, they would exchange oxen with one another. sheganvum nachrim akirei v'sarsu, meaning their friends who were non-Jews stole them or pretended to steal them and castrated them, and then they would exchange oxen with one another. That's how they got around this knas. And the Gemara continues, Boy Rami Bar Chama asks, Hoshev lakots b'fiyah. Let's say he puts a thorn into its mouth, so it's not able to eat while it's threshing. Mahu, what's the halach over there? Is that considered like muzzling the animal? Would that be a violation of the prohibition? The Gemara asks, Hoshev lachasima mal yasi. If he actually put a thorn there, that actually is muzzling. What kind of question is that? Of course, that's a violation of the Isser. Ela yoshev lakots b'fiyah ma'u. Rather, what the question is let's say there happens to already be a thorn in its mouth. So then the question is, do you have to remove it? That already is a question. As Rashi says, Yashav lakots b'fiyav eini yechol lechol min adisha, can't eat from the threshing. Ma, what's the halacha? Mitzvah litla, is it a mitzvah to take that thorn out? Oh, ain't mitzvah litla, or is it not a mitzvah to take that thorn out? That is the question in terms of the coats. And similarly, the Gemara asks, Hirbitz la arimi b'chutz. Let's say he places a lion on the outside to stop it, to scare it from eating. Ma, what's the halacha? Is that considered to be muzzling? The Gemara again asks, Hirbitz la, but if he's the one that's setting the lion over there, chasim mal yasi, again, that is for sure muzzling. Ella, rather, again, revising the question, Ravatz la ari mi b'chutzma. What if there already is a lion there? Does it have to be removed? Is that an issue? Hamid benami b'chutz, or similarly, let's say you place its young child on the outside, so it distracts it from the food. Mahu, what's the halach in that case? Or haisat semeil amayim, let's say it's thirsty for water. In order to eat, it needs the water. Mahu, what's the halach over there? Is that an issue of muzzling the animal? Or paras la katbila gabe dishama, or let's say spreading leather over what is being threshed, so the animal cannot see the food. Mahu, what's the halach in that situation? Rashi says, katablayo or shalok v'habehema mahalechas al gabav. The behema, the animal, is going over this leather mat that was spread. Ve'ino roes adisha. He can't see what is being threshed. Mikarina be bidisho alo. Is that considered bidisho? Is that a problem there? Have you avoided the problem of muzzling the animal in that by doing that or not? And the Gemara says, Pshot meha chad, we can at least answer one of these questions from the following brisa. The Tanyas we learned in a brisa. Rashoy bal para laharif paraso, the owner of the cow, let's say he's giving his cow to someone else to use, so the owner of the cow can starve his cow ahead of time, kedesha tochal min adisha, so that the animal will then eat from the produce, harbe, that it will eat a lot. In other words, the owner of the cow wants his cow to eat from somebody else, so he starves it on purpose before the work is being done. That is permitted. Verashoy balabayis, and similarly on the other side, the balabayis is permitted. Lahatir pikia omer lifnei habehema, he can take a bunch of straw and put it in front of the animal, kedesha lo tochal min adisha, in order that it's not going to eat from the produce, kedesha lo tochal min adisha harbe, in order that it's not going to eat a lot of the produce. And so that's already similar to covering it up with a leather hide. And the Gemara says, Shani Hasam, but it's different over there. You can't bring a proof from the case of the straw to ka'achla, because the animal still is eating something, so maybe that's not exactly the same thing. And the Gemara continues, if you want, I could say, Rashoy balabayis lahatir pikia amr lifnei behema meikara. What it might mean over there is that the balabayis originally can give the animal straw, so that it fills up on straw, kadesha lo tochal harbe min adisha, that way it won't eat a lot of the produce that is being threshed. In that case, it has nothing to do with the situation of placing a leather hide over the disha. And the Gemara continues, Boy minei Rabbi Yonasan me Rabbi Simoy. Rabbi Yonasan asked Rabbi Simoy the following question, Chosma mi bachutz mahu, if he muzzles the animal from the outside, meaning to say, before the animal actually starts the threshing, he already muzzles it beforehand. What's the halach in that case? Is that an issue? Shor bidisho amar achmona v'halav bidisho, who on the one hand we could say, it says you're not allowed to muzzle the ox while it's threshing, and here he didn't muzzle it while it was threshing. He muzzled it beforehand. Odilmar maybe lo sidosh bechasimo amar achmona, the pasuk just means you can't let the animal thresh while it is muzzled, and that's happening over here. That's what amar achmona, that's what the pasuk is saying, and that would be a problem because he muzzled it beforehand, and now while it's threshing, it is muzzled. Amar le, so he said back to him, we can learn it from the house of your father. This is Rabbi Simoy was responding to Rabbi Yonasan, because Rabbi Yonasan was a Kohen, and he was saying we can learn it from a halacha by the Kohanim. It says by the Kohanim, Yain v'shecher al teish ta'tov v'necha itcha bevoachem. It says you can't drink wine when you come to serve in the Beis HaMikdash. Bevoachem hu da'asr, does that just mean to say that when you come in while you're serving in the Beis HaMikdash, you can't drink hamishto me al shari, but you could drink beforehand and then come in and serve in the Beis HaMikdash? That can't be. Well, the whole point is that you have to, the reason why is you're not allowed to be drunk while you're serving in the Beis HaMikdash. You have to be able to distinguish between what is kodesh, what is holy, and what is chol, what is mundane. Elamah hasam, rather, just like over there, b'shaz bia lo te shichros, the pasuk simply means when you're coming, meaning when when you're serving in the Beis HaMikdash, you can't be drunk. Hachanami here also, b'shas disha, at the time of threshing, lo tahei chasima, the animal cannot be muzzled. It doesn't matter if you muzzled it beforehand, that is still going to be a problem. Rashi explains, again, you're doing it before it started the threshing. That was the question of the Gemara. We can learn it from the house of your father, because Kohen Haya, he was a Kohen. Lahavdil ben HaKodesh. It says in the pasuk, the whole reason not to be drunk is to be able to distinguish between the Kodesh and the Chol. The whole point to not be drunk is that you should be able to distinguish between holy service and mundane service. If he drinks and then goes in to serve in the Beis HaMikdash, mikol makom shikr, who he's still drunk, v'lo yad lahavdil, he still can't make that distinction. And so therefore, again, the Gemara says it's the same issue by chasima, it would be a problem. And the Gemara continues, Tanu Rabbanan, the rabbis taught, hachosem esapar, if somebody muzzles a cow, v'hamizavik b'kilayim, or somebody pairs together two animals that are different kinds, Potter, he is Potter. Ve'eno lok eladashu manik belvad. The person who gets malchus is only the person who actually does the threshing, or the person who's actually leading the animals that are kilayim. Rashi explains, hachosem esapar v'lo ha'evira aladisha, meaning the person who did the muzzling is not the one that actually brought it to the threshing floor. V'chaveru dashba. It's his friend that does the threshing with the muzzled animal. V'chein hamizavik shor v'chamor lekaron uvachaveru v'hinig. Let's say a person pairs together an ox and a donkey to the wagon, but somebody else comes and actually leads the animal. So the point of the brisa here is Pater Harishon, the first person is exempt. V'eno chayv ela hadash, the person who's chayv is the one who's doing the threshing. To lo sidosh bechasimo kamarachmana, because the pasuk is saying you can't thresh while the animal is muzzled. V'gabi kilayim nami, by kilayim as well. Lo sachrosh chsiv, it says you can't plow with them together. V'eno loka elazeh hamanhigo, the one who gets malchus is the one that is leading the animals. And so the Gemara continues, Itmar, it was stated the following, Machlokas Amoroim, Chosma B'kol, what if a person muzzles the animal with his voice? V'hinhiga B'kol, let's say he leads the animals by Kilayim with his voice, what would be the halacha in that case? Rabbi Yochanan Amar Chayiv, Rabbi Yochanan says Chayiv, Reish Lakish Amar Potter, Reish Lakish says Potter, Rashi explains, Chosma B'kol Kashaisa Shochel Lechol, when the animal is bending down to eat, Hayagoer, but he yells at the animal, stops it from eating, V'hinhiga B'kol B'kilayim, let's say he's leading these two animals with his voice, V'eno he's not actually grabbing the animals, he's not grabbing them and leading them physically, but he's leading them with his voice. And so again, we have a machlokas over here between Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish. Rabbi Yochanan says Chayiv, and Reish Lakish says Potter. And the Gemara explains, Rabbi Yochanan Amar Chayiv, Rabbi Yochanan says Chayiv, Akimas Piv, have a Maisa, because he's moving his mouth, that's considered an action, and you get malchus if you violate a lav by doing an action. Reish Lakish Amar Potter, Reish Lakish says Potter, Kala, lo have a Maisa, voice is not considered an action. Rashi explains, have a Maisa, v'havale lav sheyesh bo Maisa. If it's considered an action, that is a negative commandment where the person is doing an action. V'lo kanalav, he gets malchus for that. So the machlokas over here is based on whether or not using the voice is considered a Maisa, is considered an action. And the Gemara continues, Eisvei Rabbi Yochanan l'Reish Lakish. Rabbi Yochanan asks Reish Lakish the following question, and we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Tzadi Aleph Amud Aleph.